Hey, this is Jerry Henley, lifelong firearms enthusiast, firearms instructor, and really passionate about firearms and their place in our society. This series of videos is probably not for the people out there who are already well versed in firearms. Instead, this is for the people out there who might be at the very beginning of their journey, might not know much about firearms, or may, even if they don't have an interest, realize they want to educate themselves for the safety of themselves and those around them. So this is going to be a series of very basic firearm safety and use videos, and I hope you find it interesting. Again, if you're somebody who's a firearms enthusiast yourself, maybe these videos aren't for you, although certainly a little education never hurt anybody, but this might be for your wife or husband or brother, sister, father, daughter, anybody in your life that you might think, you know what, here's some good information. We're going to do a series of short videos. We're not going to get into these really long drawn out explanations. And with that, let's go ahead and get to the next video. Hello again, this is Jerry Nines with yet another episode in my online Firearms Academy. Now, before we get into the meat of the video, there's something that I want to talk to you about. And that is, do you enjoy these videos enough to buy me a cup of coffee? The reality is, the sad reality is that all these videos cost money. I'm not going to go into this as a whole big song and dance, but I am going to put something down below that is a link to my Patreon site. I have my Patreon set up where you can just give $3 or $5 a month, which is a cup of coffee, depending upon if you're at like a diner maybe, or a Starbucks. If that's something that you think this content is worth and all my other shooting content is worth, then please go ahead and consider that. It really helps me be able to do things like buy cameras, buy new lighting, buy ammunition, especially as we in the Firearms Academy get to shooting and all the shooting that I'm doing in my current videos. So with that, if you think that's something that you might be interested in help me out with, that's fine. If not, hey, enjoy the videos anyway. YouTube is free, right? When I originally filmed video number 4, which was unloading and showing clear on a revolver, I had filmed both of those together as one episode, but it got a little long, so I thought it'd be easier if I broke it up. So we're instead going to go ahead and do a separate video now about unloading and showing clear on a semi-automatic pistol. Semi-automatics are a little different. We remember in video number 3 that semi-automatics, unlike those revolvers, they don't hold all of their ammunition in one place where we can just get that out of the way and we know that we're in a place of relative safety. With semi-automatics, we have the rounds of ammunition that are carried in a magazine. Usually, there are exceptions, but we're talking about the vast majority. And then don't forget that we also have that one round that when we load goes into the chamber, which is at the rear of the barrel. What that means is as I take my magazine, put it into the chamber, let that slide go forward, strips that round off. Now we have ammo in 2 places, don't we? We have one remaining round of ammo in our magazine, and then we have another round of ammunition here in the chamber. So what do? In order to unload and make this gun safe to be able to show clear, thank you very much, we have to do 2 things. Get rid of the magazine get rid of the ammunition that's stored, and then get rid of the ammunition that's ready to go. A good rule to follow is get rid of the most ammunition first, and the most ammunition is going to be in our magazine. Now, in the case of this Smith & Wesson, I have a little button right here to the rear and bottom of the trigger assembly, which includes the trigger and the trigger guard. That little button allows the magazine to just come out. Great, I've now gotten rid of the most bullets or most cartridges first. However, is my gun empty? Am I clear? The answer, of course, is no, because don't forget, when we loaded, that slide came forward and stripped that round off of the magazine, and it is now in the chamber. So the second step in a semi-automatic is going to be getting the slide, or as I mentioned in video number 3, there might be an enclosed bolt, but either way, we're going to get that back to get that cartridge out of the chamber. Now, this is where we get into some weird stuff. And so first of all, I'm just going to do it. There's a little latch right here on this particular gun. You can see it kind of moves up and down. That allows me to put some pressure with my index finger because I'm a lefty, or if, as a good instructor, I can also do this with my right hand. Either way, put some pressure up, grab the slide, pull that back. You may have seen and heard that round eject. And now I can go ahead and do the same thing that I did with my revolver. I'm going to visually and then physically inspect. And I always like to stick my finger where that magazine would be as well, just to make sure that there's not a round hung up. There's some mechanisms back here that we can talk about in later videos that are called the extractor that can hold up, or hold on to a piece of ammunition. So we want to make sure that we visually, and what are we visually inspecting for? I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but there's the end of the chamber, which is the end of the barrel. I am being careful not to cover myself with the muzzle. And we want to look in there and make sure we don't see the end of a cartridge. And we also want to, because it is dark in there, right? And as you shoot guns, they get dirty and things get black. We also want to go ahead and just make sure that I can feel that little hole in there. So again, this is how we're going to clear a semi-automatic pistol. We're going to get rid of the most ammunition first, and then after that we're going to open up the action and we're going to visually and physically inspect. It's pretty easy when you think about it from just a logical perspective. Why does it become difficult, or how can it become difficult? Well, there are a couple of different ways. Number one, this slide in this case is under spring tension. So you have to overcome that spring pressure, and that can be difficult. Some things you might want to do, sometimes people hold this steady and then they just want to move this back and forth. I tell people, you know what, as long as you're maintaining muzzle control, put yourself in a position where you can exert the most force that you have on the firearm, and maybe push with one hand while you pull with the other. Additionally, I went ahead and gave that upward pressure on this little lever, and now my slide is locked back. Do all guns have this little, or all semi-automatic pistols have that little lever? No, they don't. In fact, some have almost like a hidden little divot that you have to push up. And there are some firearms, some semi-automatic pistols that don't even have the mechanical ability to have that slide locked open. So you may encounter a lot of different firearms designs, but either way, the message is the same and the mechanics are the same. Get rid of the most bullets first, get that slide open, look in, be able to physically and visually inspect. Now in this case, if my slide won't lock open, do I really want to put my hands in there, my fingers in there? Probably not, right? So in that case, what we can do is, maybe get that slide back, okay, and just give a real good with a lot of light visual inspection. We really always have to just balance between the different ways in which we might be negatively impacted by what's going on, but there is no more negative impact than a bullet going off when we don't expect it to. One other thing about semi-automatic pistols is that when you have a semi-automatic pistol, and here's a magazine with one of those snap caps or dummy rounds remaining, when there's a round in the magazine and the slide reciprocates either through your action, which we're going to do here in a second, or because the weapon is firing, that slide is going to come back. Now I'm not manipulating anything except this back and forth. The slide's going to come back, and then it's going to go forward when I let it go, loading that next round into the magazine. But notice what happens without any manipulation when I take the slide and pull it back, and now the only remaining round in the gun is going to leave, and we have an empty magazine. In this case, and in many cases, that slide locks back on its own on an empty magazine. So again, do all semi-automatics do that? No, the vast majority do. The reason I mention this is so that you know why your gun's locking the slide back on its own. But additionally, I will say that if you have some real problems with locking that slide back, then here is an alternate method I want to show you. If you have an empty magazine that you have triple, quadruple checked and made sure it is in fact empty, what you can do is you can, right before you put it in the pistol, look at it again. Is this empty? Yes, it is. We can put that in there. We can take our slide, and if we just get it back, it's going to lock itself back. We can then remove the magazine, and then we can visually and physically inspect, okay? So that is not the same as when we're unloading from a loaded magazine. This is if you had a spare utility magazine, one that you were using just because you have trouble getting that slide locked back. But either way, the mechanics are the same. Let's get the most bullets out of the way first and then visually and physically inspect. That actually is kind of a nice analog to how we do things with the revolver, right? Get the ammo out of the way first, and then we can go ahead and get her empty and then visually and physically inspect. There's one last thing that I want to talk about, and I kept it last because it's very, very important. Sometimes when we are working with a firearm, especially semi-automatics, okay, and we're trying to get them unloaded, and we're struggling, we can't get the slide back, we can't get it locked back, at some point in our mind, these stop becoming firearms and they start becoming a problem. What I mean by that is that I've seen students who are great in the classroom and on the range. Their muzzle control is where they want it to be. Their finger is straight alongside the frame of the firearm, as we talked about in video number 1. And they're doing everything great. And then they get to the point where they have to manipulate their slide. They get that magazine out, they're doing everything wonderful, and then they start fighting, right? They start struggling and they do this, and then it becomes a mechanical problem and they forget it's a gun. And when they forget it's a gun, they do stuff like, I'm not even gonna do it with the real gun. They'll take it and they got it like this, straight in their body, pointing right down at their feet. I've seen people try to put the gun in there, underneath their arm. I've seen them try to, just do all sorts of crazy, stupid things because it stops being a gun in their mind. It starts becoming a mechanical problem they have to overcome. Don't do that. Remember, it's always a firearm. And until it is cleared, until you have actually entered into that sacred covenant, either with yourself or with others, it remains a potentially deadly implement that we need to respect. I'm really enjoying this series of videos. I hope that you are too. Thanks so much for taking the time with me. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below. We do have the ability to subscribe as well if that's something that does it for you. Think again about that cup of coffee via Patreon, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again. God bless America. This is Jerry Nines, signing off.